Okay, so it says that we're live. I think that we're live. I'm going to trust it and believe that we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is Carrow Brown. I'm an urban fantasy author. I'm also the executive assistant over at the Rippaverse, and we are here today to do my very first Carrow Cawing interview. Before I let my guest introduce himself, the motivation behind wanting to do that is that there's a lot of talk and advice that's out there on the internet streets about how to be a writer and how to thrive in the industry. And some of it is good and some of it is regurgitated garbage from people's blog posts. So I thought, let's just go ahead and skip that shit and actually get the veterans in here and talk to them about it, right? So my very first guest is Blaine Pardoe. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us about you.
I'm a writer. I write in a lot of different genres. I write with my daughter in true crime. We've done a number of best-selling true crime books, including one that was a New York Times bestseller, which was great for her. It was her first book when she was 23, so that was a blast. I wrote for BattleTech for 36, almost 37 years. I got canceled, but I write in a lot of different genres anyway. I write business management books, and I continued on writing a number of different series. I write political thriller series like Blue Dawn. I write the new series that I'm doing that's a mecha series is Land and Sea. We did 6 books in that series last year. So it's been great. I'm out writing on a lot of different things. I'm actually reaching a much broader audience since I got canceled and making more money doing it. So I wish I'd been canceled a little earlier in some respects.
So you've dabbled in this writing thing just a little bit. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I write in a lot of different genres, and I have a lot of fun doing it. It's very therapeutic to write. It's also very rewarding to write, and I don't mean rewarding in terms of money as much as it's very relaxing, very cathartic for me, and things like that. So I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And that's all, like before I launch into my first question, I thought that was really cool that you said that you work with your daughter on that too. Is it something that she pursues with you actively, or is it just kind of like a sometimes thing?
Well, I did a couple of true crime books on my own, and I had a case come up where a prosecutor reached out to me and said, "Hey, it's a cold case. Can you help us with this?" And I took a look at it. It was in the town I was raised in, which was Battle Creek, Michigan. I live in Virginia now. And, my daughter, I went to her because she's a true crime buff too. And I said, you've been wanting to get into writing. Want to try tackling this with me? And it turns out her writing style is very similar to mine. So I don't know how much of that's genetic or just her exposure to the stuff I've written. She's a huge true crime fan. So we actually tackled the book together. You can't even tell what parts she wrote versus what I wrote. That it's very seamless, and we had a great time doing it. It's a lot of fun. We've done, I think, 3 books together. I've lost track. I've had 100 books published or so I've lost track of how many books in what genre I've done.
I want this problem that you have. That's what I want. Yes.
Well,
that's really cool though.
It's fun. It's a blast doing stuff with my daughter.
I love that. I'm slightly jealous, but that's okay. So one of the first questions I usually like to ask is the inspiration that got you into writing. So everybody comes to the writing habit like in their own way. Sometimes it's for therapeutic, sometimes it's because they want to write the story that they want. What was the thing that led you to this?
Well, I was a gamer back in the day, and when I started gaming, I'm talking 1972, 73 with the original white box of Dungeons and Dragons. And when I got started in this, it was I really wanted to write stuff for the gaming industry, that's where I jumped in. I started work originally in the school newspaper in college, which was a blast. I wrote for the school newspaper for 3.5 years, and they finally, my senior year, figured out I wasn't a journalism student. I was a business student. And it was fun. I mean, I just enjoy writing. It's very relaxing for me. And back then we were doing everything on typewriters, so we didn't have word processors. So producing a manuscript was a complicated and often messy process to go through. I started out doing a lot of game stuff out in the gaming industry, and that led me into doing science fiction novels, specifically in the BattleTech realm, but I've done novels for other franchises as well. It just became something I enjoyed doing, and now I'm off doing my own stuff, and it's just it's a fun, relaxing journey. It has its challenges. I mean, there's a ton of challenges.
Oh,
But
that's my next question. If you want us to go ahead and segue into that.
sure. I mean, I was working full time. I worked full time for an accounting firm, Ernst and Young. I mean, I literally traveled around the globe doing stuff. So I was working full time and writing. That was a challenge. And you really have to compartmentalize. It's like I have I have to have time for the family. I have to have time for work, and then late at night and on weekends, I was doing writing. There were trade-offs with that. I haven't. Yes, last weekend was the first time I'd watched a football game probably in 20 years.
Oh wow, really?
I mean, I just don't follow sports at all. I listen to it on the radio. I hear the summaries. So if anybody asks me, I can kind of bullshit my way through that. But honestly, I don't follow sporting teams. That I spend my time writing. I don't watch a lot of television. I write. That's my therapy. That was one of the big challenges. I think writing in multiple genres is a huge challenge. My agent for years was saying, pick a genre, write in that genre, do that. And I started in science fiction, and I said, but I like military history. I want to write military history books. And they were like, he's like, you're not a historian. I said, but I can be. Because I knew I became a journalist in college, writing for the school newspaper. I knew I could do that. So I started writing military history. Then I decided I wanted to write true crime. Then I wanted to write business management. So it morphs. You don't necessarily carry your audience with you from genre to genre, but in some cases you do. And to me, I write what I'm reading and what I enjoy reading at the time. And I think the other thing that was a real challenge was being canceled. Going through the emotional roller coaster of being canceled was extremely difficult, mostly because I had a stalker who had threatened my life, and I had to get a protective order against this person and things along those lines. I mean, law enforcement's involved and everything else. It was nuts going through that process. And you really learn that a lot of your online friends who are sworn big fans of yours, etc., will turn on you the minute they go, I don't like your politics. And the minute they figure out what your politics are, they flip on you and become your worst enemy. That was hard to kind of process at first, because I'm a very easygoing person. I like to think people are straightforward and honest and noble. And what I've learned is they're not. They're deceptive and manipulative. And, publishers are forced to bow to the whims of what they see on social media. And it's a stupid path to go down. Once you go down that path, it's going to dominate you forever. But they still do it. So those were probably the biggest challenges I had, is, compartmentalizing my life enough to where I could still maintain a writing career and a professional career, and that was difficult to do. And there were times where I had my manager at work go, well, we didn't give you a big raise this year because we knew you had books come out and you were making money doing that. And I'm like, that's actually none of your business.
Yeah, those are different things. That's some lawsuit food right there. Oh
you don't feel like suing when they're paying bills, but at the same time, there was goofy stuff like that got thrown at me. And I think a lot of people out there who are writers right now are working full time, and it is possible to do this, but you've got to be a person that can go, I'm going to finish this one job and now I'm going to start something else. And it's, when you layer in a family into that, it's even more complicated. Thank God I have the wife I do.
So when you're talking about trying to balance all these different aspects of your life, I'm going off script from the questions I sent you just because I want some insight onto this. But when you're trying to do all of that, like what technique have you used that basically helps you like focus on one thing at a time when you're
well, when I was at work, that's what I did. I mean, I literally boxed it up. I used a lot of vacation time to do things like go to the National Archives or go to the Library of Congress if I was doing research for a book. I used my vacation time, appropriately to completely separate. But I think where a lot of people make mistakes is they go, well, I can, for lunch today, I'll try to write for an hour. And it's hard to fit. You can't switch your brain on and off. At least I can't. I don't know about other people. I can't switch it on and off. I have to have kind of a buffer time between those things. And you just can't do that. So to me, it was always a matter of discipline. It was, my work hours are for 10 hours a day. And when that 10th hour hit, as tempting as it is to stay online and keep working, it's like, look, I need to shut down because I need to spend time with my family. And when the kids are in bed, now I can start doing the writing. And there were little buffer times in between each of those things where I could kind of slowly transition into it. So to me, I think it's that what worked for me, and I'm not saying it works for everybody, but you really do have to compartmentalize your life a little bit. And if you try to blur it all together and go, well, if I get, there's no calls for an hour, maybe I can fit in some writing. It's hard to get your brain to kind of rewire itself from what you do in your day job to what you're doing for entertainment or your relaxation.
Yeah, that kind of task transition is really difficult when you're switching from things like that. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there. So you kind of answered this before, but I wanted to maybe dive into it a little bit more. So I hear that you read about mechs and BattleTech, and you said that you were a little bit of a gamer. So tell me about how you were able to kind of leap into this, and was it like a hell yes moment, or let me think about it and then yes?
Well, at the time, FASA had just put out their Star Trek role-playing game, and I loved it. It was wonderful. And I contacted them. I wrote up a scenario set called the Strider Incident, and I sent it to them and said, hey, I'd really like, to get published doing a Star Trek, for your Star Trek role-playing game. And they said, we're going to buy this from you. And I was like, yes, because it was my last semester at college, and I was already selling something, which was great. They said, we got this other game called Battle Droids, which became BattleTech. They said, why don't you do some writing for that? And I was like, I don't know anything about that. So they sent me a bunch of source material. And it's giant, big, stompy war robots. It in many respects, the concept is a little bit crazy at times. 3-story war machines running around 112 kilometers an hour. It's like, please, you can't make that work. A lot of hand waving, but it was fun to do. And I got started doing source books and scenario sets for that. And then that branched into doing novels for BattleTech. And, it's a logical progression that I kind of followed. And it's one of the tips I always give writers is, look, you want to write the great novel. You've got it tucked away in the back of your head. But if you really want to be successful, write something else. Write other stuff that you might go, well, I'm not really pumped about this, but I'm going to make $50 doing it, and it pushes me to do some research in some different areas and things like that. You really just want to write every day, and I did it throughout college. I maintained a journal every day, carried it with me in my backpack, and in my spare time I wrote things down. And some of the stuff is absolutely stupid, and I need to burn these things before I die. I don't want my kids to find them. But I looked at those journals, and those journals were part of a process of writing every day something. If I wasn't writing something to sell, write that. And I think that's important for people. I think you've got to be able to kind of push yourself in that direction.
So I guess when we're talking about doing tips for writers, and you talked about the journal thing, because I keep a journal too, and sometimes with the journal, I'll either use it as my emotional dumpster, and I'll just put all my thoughts in there, or I'll also kind of use it to experiment with challenging how I think a little bit about things. So do you do exercises like that with the journaling, or is it a completely different thing?
I don't do a journal anymore, but I went through mine, and I even used it to kind of catalog words that I heard that I didn't know the definitions of. Kind of broaden my vocabulary. And it was fun flipping through it. I went through it about a month ago, and I started flipping through one of them, and I was like, Oh yeah, I didn't know what that word was then, but I wrote it down so that I could go look it up and frame the context on it and stuff like that. So much now can be done with the internet. I didn't have that luxury when I went to college, but for me, I found that the journal was just a way for me to capture day-to-day stuff. And if I thought of something witty, I would put it down. If I thought of a line that would be fun for a character to say, even if I didn't have the story in mind, just a great line that I heard, a great insult often,
Oh yeah.
capture it because it's like I can come back and use this at some point. It's going to be something I can fit in or dovetail into a story. And I think that's one of the things a journal lets you do is kind of keep that.
Okay. Yeah. I like that a lot. I used to like keep the word of the day from like Webster Dictionary in mine, but like Webster Dictionary became like really loaded with ads and stuff. So trying to get to the word, like the whole website would lag, and I'd be like, I'm just going to go get like an actual book now. But yeah, so, okay. I love that. So, can we talk about your writing process a little bit? So you write every day, you said.
Oh,
is there like...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm writing every day. Now, it's been a little crazy the last couple of weeks because I wrote a true crime book with my daughter on the Colonial Parkway murders, and the FBI and Virginia State Police announced 2 of those murders have been solved through DNA, and it's reopened all the cases. And so there's been a lot of media stuff that I've had to do, TV interviews, newspaper interviews, things along those lines.
What a problem to have. I'm sorry.
Well, it sounds glamorous, but it's a little challenging at times. But I kind of juggle that in with my writing. But I write every day, 7 days a week. I find if I don't write, it's like a muscle. If you don't use it all the time, let's say you skip going to the gym 3 days in a row. And then you go to the gym.
Not here.
It really hurts when you go back. It's like, gee, I can't do these things as fast as I was and as heavy as I was and things like that. So writing's a muscle that you got to keep exercising. And so, yeah, I write every day. Now, my throughput varies anywhere from like 3,000 words a day to 6,000 or 7,000 words a day. Depending on what I'm working on. This last week, I had 2 books come back to me from editors where I had to go through and look at edits and stuff. And that can take 3 days to go through, 3 to 5 days to go through a book, look at what the editor said, think about what you want to change or not change, things along those lines. But I count that as writing because I'm back in my document and working with those characters and stuff like that. So, it's a lot of work, but I think as a writer, you need to, it's a muscle and you exercise it and you do it. You have to also set aside some time to read. I have found some fantastic authors lately that are just absolutely phenomenal. And it's raised my expectations of myself to read very good authors. And so you have to set aside time to do that. And, it's just a lot of times you need to step back as the writer and just put the characters behind the wheel and let them drive. They'll carry on conversations. My wife will say, "I heard you down there. Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "I wasn't talking. The characters were talking." But I'm talking out both parts, of a conversation, and that's letting those characters just take over, and they'll tell you what they want to say and what's in character and what's not.
I had so many questions. I'm going to focus on the first one. So, no, it's so good. I really love this. Okay, so when you sit down to do your daily writing, so you said that you write anywhere between like 3,000 and 6,000 words, which, those are, small numbers. But like, do you like set aside like time in the morning or whenever you do it to get that done? Or is it like I sit and I stay here until like a certain benchmark is done?
I always go to the gym first thing in the morning. And it sounds a little crazy. I was never into working out until I had a stalker and I needed to be fit in case I got attacked. But I will spend an hour and a half to 2 hours at the gym and get my blood flowing and then come home, shower up, and then I plop down on the computer and rock it out. I mean, I don't have a specific time every day that I do it, but I would say by 11 o'clock, I'm cranking. And I may go until 6 or 7 in the evening, and that depending on what we have going as a family at this point. So it's there's always those challenges too.
Oh yeah, real life obligations. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I know. I always forget about holidays. Do you forget about holidays, or does your wife help you with that?
Well, I retired from Ernst & Young 3 years ago to write full time. I have a hard time telling what day of the week it is.
Okay.
I have to put reminders on my phone for, oh, that's right. It is today when I'm doing an interview, and it's Saturday. You lose track of the days, and that's perfectly fine. It's part of the advantage of being a writer full time is I am in control of my own schedule.
Oh, that is very awesome. I'm also very envious of you. I have to fit mine in before everybody at work wakes up, and then after that, that's it. So when you're doing your writing and your plots and stuff like that, not for your true crime, obviously, because you have things that you're working off of for that, but for like the more fiction pieces, do you focus on like plot or characters? Like, what does that look like?
That's a great question. And it comes up a lot. And I will tell you, it's changed with me over time. When I first started, the BattleTech novels were very plot driven. So you really pitched a plot, and the characters kind of went along for a ride. And when I first started, I would say the first 3 novels that I did kind of followed that pattern. And then I realized over time, the books I was reading, what I was enjoying more were the characters, not the plot. When you get down to it, the plot can be very simple, very basic, but if you've got awesome characters, you can take a very mundane plot and make it exciting and really punch it up. And there's great dialogue and great character and versus character interactions and things along those lines. So I have dramatically shifted my thinking to characters first. And then I look at not every character has an arc, just so we're all, a lot of people go, oh, you gotta have an arc for every character. No, some people are, I always say this, if there's assholes out there, they are assholes for their life, you don't have an arc on that type of character. Some characters do, however, make a transition of some sort. And so you look at that arc and you go, this is the character I like. I like this character. This is why I like this character. Then you go, where do I want this character at the end of the book or the end of the trilogy or whatever? And then what happens is the story forms itself on how do I make that journey for that character happen? And what other characters along the way are going to interact with that character, help drive that story. And so the story kind of follows the characters through this. The characters are just they're going to determine the dialogue. They're going to determine their interactions and things along those lines. They drive the plot. And I found for me, it's actually much more rewarding to write that kind of a story where it's more character centric and character focused than it is to write about, let's talk about a mercenary unit being betrayed, which, God, it's been covered 100 times in military sci-fi, that's boring, but it's more interesting if I talk about the characters that are going to be there and how they feel about it and how they react to the circumstance and rise to the occasion or fall from that. And I've been doing some wonderful books. I just did a book for Galaxy's Edge that, great characters. Oh my God, they're some of the most fun characters I've ever had. And their interactions between each other, the banter between the characters is fun. And it's enjoyable. And when I'm doing the Blue Dawn series and Land and Sea, I have a huge cast of characters, like 8 main characters that go through this. And I get to put them together. Characters you wouldn't normally expect together, I put them together. And it just makes magic when you go, it'd be interesting to see how this character and this character would be if they were forced to work with each other. Let's make that happen because I want to hear what they're going to say and what they're going to do.
Okay.
It just makes it so much fun to write a book that way, as opposed to a linear, here's a plot. Let's see what we can do about forcing everything to fit this outline of a plot. I'm like, let's talk about what these characters are and what makes them tick. And
Mm-hmm.
even the secondary and tertiary characters really, they start to sizzle at that point, and it's a lot more fun.
So, so here's a question for you, because I actually had this conversation with one of my my movie buff friends, and he gave out a plot, and the plot was you have a female spy who works for the government, and she's found out about a conspiracy, and throughout the journey you find out that she's actually a double agent, and she disappears into the night to spy again another day, right? And he said, "What movie is that?" And we all listed off like a different movie, like Atomic Bomb, Salt. Like we just started going through all of them, right? And that's when we realized that all female spy movies are basically the same movie, just by a different actress, right? So on that note, even though like that plot is the same, do you think like dynamic and really exciting characters could save that, or do you think like at some point it was kind of like do another plot is in order?
Well, every plot's been done. And there's so many tropes out there with characters that there was a running joke I was doing at one point about how many tropes there are for military sci-fi, and I actually wrote a thing called Trope Wars, which was a spoof on that, because it was like there's so many off-the-shelf tropes that you have in military sci-fi that everybody's gone to those wells and has been there a million times. So it's okay to do that. I think you got to do it in a way, though, so that people don't do exactly the exercise you went through, which is I just watched Salt, but I watched it with a different character and a different actress and a different set of scenes.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have a character that drives that. What you're talking about was a plot, and my whole thing is, well, let's get into the character and how the character views this, because I could take what you just said and twist it a little bit on edge and say, but this person doesn't flip. This person's doing it for their own purpose, not for the government's purpose. And suddenly it becomes a slightly different story about if you make it more character centric rather than the plot. And yeah, I think there's a lot of those tropes out there, Sparrow and Salt and all of those kind of, they've beaten those things to death. So what makes it stand out is the actual characters that you have driving it. And if they love the character, no matter how ridiculous the character sounds in the one-line elevator pitch, it's still good. You think of the Jack Reacher character. It's like he's a guy, doesn't own anything, travels around the country, only carries a toothbrush. He buys all his clothes at a Salvation Army. And wherever he goes, bad things seem to suck to him, and he manages to overcome them because he's really gifted at observation, and he's just a brutal guy, period. If I told you that, you'd be like, that's the dumbest idea for a series or a book or a movie or whatever. That no one will watch that. But when you understand who the character of Reacher is and how he thinks and how he acts and how he interacts with people, that becomes a bestseller, and that becomes a top-notch series. So it's one of those things that, to me, the character is what drives that. It has to be. The minute you wander off that, you're just telling stories, and we've seen those stories, as you pointed out.
Yeah, we have. We've seen all of them. Let's see. So I think you're doing a great job of answering the questions before I get to them. So that's fantastic. Thank you for foreseeing me. So when you were first introduced to me, and I think this is the one that we're probably going to talk about. We were kind of talking about it before we went live, and we're going to talk about some more. But the first time that you were introduced to me, it was along the lines of this guy had a stalker that pretended to be a female lesbian online to get him fired from his job. And I was like, what? What did you just say?
I laugh only because when you say it out loud, it does sound ridiculous, but it's been, I would say, one of the most tumultuous periods of my life. I wrote for BattleTech for 36 years. I had a person who was a lesbian nurse that was, there's no other word you can use. And this is what the police used to describe her. She's an online stalker. This person hounded me constantly, complained to my publisher and said I'm an alt-right wing crazy, and my publisher did a review of a year's worth of social media, to basically say, this person wasn't crazy, or, Blaine's not a crazy alt-right right fanatic. They appeased this person. They actually gave this lesbian nurse a story, sold one of her stories to their magazine, thinking that would appease this person. So this person used their position as a lesbian in that community to do that. When I announced the book Blue Dawn was coming out, which is a conservative political thriller series about Second American Civil War, and it's all that had come out was the back cover of the book. And this person contacted a fellow writer of mine and said, I want to shoot Blaine in the fucking crotch. Better yet, I would prefer to set him on fire.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. So I went to the police, and they opened an investigation. And there's a long story that goes into all this other stuff. But this person was harassing me every other day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, online, etc. I wasn't engaging with them because law enforcement said don't, and I didn't. Eventually what we learned after we executed a warrant to get this person's IP address was that it was a 40-year-old man who had been fired from a big box store that he worked at for issuing terroristic threats, a crime he pled guilty to. And he wasn't a lesbian. He wasn't a nurse. He was just a guy living in his dad's basement or his mom's basement and firing these things off. When I told the publisher about it, they weren't entirely surprised. About a year later, though, this person continued to push the publisher, was making a big stink online about I was a misogynist, I was a xenophobe, I was homophobic, which was really the hurtful one because my son is gay. And I was like, that's so far from the truth. And what they do is they kind of take snippets of things on social media, and then they put their spin to it. And, out of context and without any description, it might look bad, but if you knew the context, you go, this isn't horrible at all. And my publisher cut me loose as a result of that. This person continued to harass me. I ended up getting a protective order against this person. So we're actually still going to court. I think we go to court in April of this year.
Wow.
But
so it never ends, right?
It never really ends. This person has gone out of their way online to go, they're the victim, that somehow I set all this up as a marketing scheme of some sort, to sell books, etc. And I'm like, my wife has been very afraid of this. Obviously, if somebody's going to burn me up, it kind of impacts her.
Yeah.
We've had to take security measures in the house. I've had to take personal security measures, and I don't ever describe what those are, but I think most
Which is fair. Yeah.
You have to, because these people are unhinged and crazy. And this was over a piece of fiction. And I'm not advocating anything. I'm not pushing anything. This is an alternate history, and it's designed to be thought provoking. But this person reacted to this without even reading the book, and that, what amazed me was the fans when I was cut loose. A lot of them went along with that person and said, well, he's a bad person because he's a conservative or whatever. Like, I'm a New York Times bestselling author. Cut me some freaking slack. And you loved my books a year ago. Why am I now being demonized? Well, we heard from this person that you're this horrible person. So
I find that dove no prove, right? Like, I find that there's no trust but verified that goes on. So, like, I'm going to go off to one side and then come back, right? I recently befriended an individual lately who also got canceled, and the story that was spun by them by like a very loud group of degenerate losers. I don't know what else to call them. Was kind of like you, like, you know, the names, the isms, and all of that stuff. And this person has like very quietly sat on the fact that he took like the initiator of like all this stuff to court, and there is literally a court transaction where that person says, I made it up because I could, right? But even though there is like that evidence that's out there, and when I say it's in court, well, guess what? Court's public record as well. So anybody could actually go look this up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and nobody goes to do due diligence anymore. And that's always what baffles me. So like when somebody tells me something, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Where did you hear it from? Right. And, you know, and that's because I went and did like, you know, my master's degree. And the first thing they always tell you is check your citations, check your sources, and look at who wrote them. Right.
Right.
But even at that level, like people wouldn't do that because they're so like, they want to really like wrap themselves around like this idea and don't want it to be wrong. And then when they find out that they are wrong, then they have an emotional reaction. And logical conversations with emotional people never goes anywhere.
Yeah. And people on the internet don't want logic. They want emotion, raw emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I tell this story, and the only reason I tell this story, I think it's important for other authors. You have to understand, there are people out there who have made their full-time job to look for reasons to be offended. Mm-hmm. And they're going to watch you. They're going to review bomb you. Every time I put out a book, within 3 hours of the book being released, I get 3 negative, starred reviews. And there's no way these people read a 400-page or 500-page book in 4 hours or 3 hours. They do this. This is part of an ongoing campaign of harassment, and that's all it is. And there are people out there that are going to come at you that you're going to go, but I just want to tell this great story about these really cool characters. And the reality is people come after you for no reason. And you've got somebody who works at Rippaverse who I contacted immediately when she was cut loose, not from the Rippaverse, but from her previous job, because of the same sort of cancel culture idiocy. It was pure idiocy. And I reached out to this person. I was like, look, I've been there. You will prevail. You're going to come through this better than you did. Okay. And she just did her 1-year anniversary of being canceled. I was like,
yeah,
I was like, I couldn't be there for that. I wanted to pop in on it, but I couldn't. I had to watch it afterwards. But it was great because you're going to go through these things, and these are things that try you, but they give you sources for great material. They give you sources to see evil characters in ways that you might not normally go through. And it's really helped me on this project I'm doing with Mike Barron. We're doing some stuff. I'm tapping all of that to really devise a level of evil that, we've experienced. Mike's experienced it. I've experienced it. A lot of people who are conservative creators or just creators in general are bucketed, labeled, and targeted. And that's how it goes. And you just have to view it as you're not a victim, you're a target. The minute you adopt the victim mentality of everybody needs to pity me, this happened to me, it doesn't play well for people, and it makes you look bad. Just let people know I'm a target. I don't apologize for what you do. Just plow ahead. You will eventually prevail, because these people constantly have to have a new target. They have to have somebody new to go after. And they sit around us. I guarantee you tonight, this person is probably watching this show because this person stalks me to this day. And there isn't a week or two that goes by that this person isn't posting something about me. And, they have multiple sock accounts, and they think people don't know about those. Yeah. And, my lawyer is up to date on that stuff. So, it's just crazy. But these people have nothing but time on their hands, and they're not productive members of society. You as a writer, however, are. You are an entertainer. And that's one of the things I've always enjoyed about the Rippaverse. Eric is providing entertainment. That's what he's an entertainer. He's producing content. How can you argue with that? That's a very noble thing in any society, is to be an entertainer.
I think so. Like in my observation of a lot of these people, so I mean, the one thing I will say, at least with Carrow, who you're talking about, who was canceled, and then we like brought her in, is that the support network, right? Because like the moment that we were like, this is BS, and why is this happening to her? And the moment like we, and I say like not just me and Rippaverse in general, but like I mean like the community, like geeks and gamers, nerderotic, like the moment that they started to circle the wagons around her, like that person had like no power at that point, right?
Yeah.
And as far as we know, they're completely gone. So I'm bringing that up because in the story that I told you about the friend that I befriend, his support network just completely disappeared. It was gone. They left him out to dry. So yeah, it was rough. And so like my question for you was like, did you have like your own network of people that you could kind of lean on, or was it just like I have to like bull through it?
I had a very small network of people, and then when I say small, I can probably put it on one hand the number of people that I openly confided in with what was a very difficult time. I mean, I've never done the concept that I could write something that would upset someone to the point where they would threaten my life was bizarre, especially fiction. I don't get me wrong. I write true crime. I do get death threats from true crime books. Okay. And I've had to go to the FBI with those things, because if you put out a book, for all you know, we write about a lot of cold cases. It could be the actual killer contacting me, threatening my life. So
well, that's terribly exciting in a not fun way.
No, it's not fun, but it's a little bit better because you're getting law enforcement in and going, look, I just released this book and this is the call I got, and it's one of your cases. So you go look at this person for me. But the concept that it was a piece of fiction of all things that upset this person that they hadn't read, and that was just, it's bizarre. But it's the level of intelligence of the people you're dealing with. This is a person that got fired from a big box store for issuing terroristic threats and pled guilty to that. He's a criminal and a repeat offender as far as I'm concerned. This is somebody that doesn't have a life. And I think my wife's summary is he looks at you and sees that you're successful. You have a beautiful wife. You have a great house. Great writing career. And those are all things that person wants. And and if they can't have them, they don't want you to have them either. And that was what she told me. And I got to tell you, that was kind of eye-opening to me because I didn't view it from that perspective. But I think my wife was pretty accurate on that. If this person, your friend of yours, doesn't have a network, have them contact people like myself or whatever. I'm happy to help people who are going through this. And I have helped probably 5 or 6 people where I've reached out to them, offered them help. Some of them have taken me up on it. We've talked because it's important that you're not alone and that you will get through this, because what they really want you to do is they want the control over you. If you're a writer and they're coming at you, what they want you to do is stop writing or write the stuff that they want. It is censorship is what it is. Plain, simple, direct, and complete. They want control over you. I don't give anybody that kind of control over me. I've worked very hard to get where I am. I'm going to tell stories I want to tell about the characters I want to talk about. And they're going to have to just pound sand. I'm sorry. I'm not giving anybody that kind of control over my existence.
Yeah, no, and that's honestly the right mentality. And this is kind of like my prior military coming out just a little bit, but I joined the military right after 9/11, like many other people did. And one of the things that they made sure that we understood is that we don't let terrorists change our lives, right? So even though they're going out and doing things, you don't change because of them, but we will go after them, right? And in that whole thing about fear and control with stalkers and people who like trying to go out and destroy each other's lives, like that really is like, I know nobody wants to hear, but that really is like local terrorism, right?
Yeah.
They are terrorizing a person.
My neighbor owns a personal protective service. So like when you mentioned Salt, he's the person that when Angelina Jolie was filming Salt, he was her personal security during the filming. So he does that type of work, and I talked to him about this, and he laid it out. He said, these people, if you react, they react more. If you don't react to what they do, they react more because they live for the reaction.
Yeah, like no matter what you do, they just won't let go.
Yeah,
right?
They're not going to let go. And he said, and they escalate. And he gave me the example of one of his clients that had a stalker like this that showed up at her hotel room with a bouquet of flowers with a butcher knife in it, and he had convinced his way through a lot of the lower level security that he had a date with her, he was supposed to meet with her, etc. And he had rented a separate suite a bridal suite where he claimed he was going to be with his bride, but they intercepted the guy, tackled him to the ground, and out of the bouquet of flowers, a knife spills out. And this is the world we live in now. And you have to treat any kind of threat to you, even if it's something on the internet, you have to treat it as credible. And these people will, if you go quiet, if you go, I'm going to shut off all my social media, well, then they've won. They've made you change what you're doing. And they will gloat, well, see, I drove him off social media because he was so guilty of what he did or whatever. I found with most people, I don't argue about this. I don't try to explain it beyond what I've told you, because in the end, you're either going to be on the side of right or the side of the terrorists. And you need to figure out where you're going to be. But you're right. You can't change your behaviors for these people.
Yeah. I mean, I always warn folks that I'm pretty violent. I mean, I don't know if I told you, but
no.
Yeah, I'm violent.
Like it.
Yeah. But so here's the funny stories, and I don't mean to deviate too far from your interview, but like when I picked up the name Carrow Brown, it was when I was a teacher. It was because they told us that we had to make a pseudonym if we were going to be a writer, and I was like so determined to write a book, right? And so I came up with Carrow from a book I was reading. Now the book was shit, like it was complete garbage, like it was the worst book ever. But for some reason, this name Carrow was in the book, and I was like, I really like this name, so I'm really finishing the book because of that, right? And my hair color is brown naturally. So I was like, okay, so I'll just be Carrow Brown, right? Well, the lady who does the SEO for my website, she got back to me one time and she's like, where'd you get this name from? And I explained it to her and she's like, okay, well, I just want to let you know that Carrow Brown is a town in England with the highest crime rate in the country. And I was like, yes, I am violent.
I like it.
But I'm always like, and this might sound kind of weird, but even like when I was a teacher, and they were always like, we don't want the kids to fight. If they're getting bullied, we need to intervene. I was like, if the kids are getting bullied, I'm going to tell them how to sock somebody in the face, right? Yeah. Because sometimes, because like nobody likes to hear it, but like people who are hurting and being hurt by others sometimes have to use violence to get out of it. And then we punish them for it, right? And I don't agree with that. Like if you're getting bullied by another person and you have to defend yourself in some shape or form, then I don't think that should be punished. And I find like the way that society responds to people like you, where, you talked about like, I have to now protect myself and I have to get firearms and things like that. And normally they're kind of like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Like you should just ignore this person. I was like, this person's mentally unstable and wants to harm me and the people around me. But you're like, it's okay. Right. And I hate it. I really do.
Everybody is easy to talk about your health and safety.
Yeah.
Be cavalier about it. But the first time somebody threatens them and says, hey, I want to burn you alive. I want to shoot you in the effing crotch, and once they actually get something like that, their reactions are very different. And, it's funny that people are so casual about it with other people, and it's a little discerning, but you work through it. And I think for most writers, they struggle with the concept of, they go, well, this is why I don't do anything on social media. Look, I'm not going to cede that battlefield. I'm not going to just walk away. To me, social media is how I connect with my fans. I'm not going to not connect with my fans because of a crazy person.
Yeah,
that's that simple.
Yeah. So I have one more question. It's a surprise question for you. That's why I didn't send it to you. So, as an author, what are things that you would like authors to actually talk about that they're not typically talking about right now?
If you're talking about actual subject matter, like you should be doing more books about this. I'm not 100% sure. I think what we've got to do is frame some of the social warfare that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to frame that in terms of science fiction stories, et cetera, so that it does make a little more sense. Um, if you're talking about things that authors should be talking about, it's real. The one thing I've noticed over the years, and it's been a pet peeve of mine, it's one of the reasons I started my own podcast where I interview authors.
Mm-hmm.
Authors don't support each other. They are the biggest dipshits when it comes to supporting each other. So I interview authors every other week on my show, and we talk. I read their books, and then we talk about their books, and
Mm-hmm.
we online review and everything else with them, and we talk about their books. And the reason is when I do that, it sells books for them. And if I
Mm-hmm.
really hate somebody's books, I will read the book but not invite them on the show because I'm not going to ruin their career. I don't want to be the guy that brings them on and goes, by the way, your book sucked. And you don't want to do that to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But authors don't really support each other very well. And I found that doing this, I built a very good network, but it's small, of
Mm-hmm.
authors who do support each other. So when I put up, hey, such and such book came out, it's on the bestseller list, I've got 3 or 4 guys that I don't even ask them. They just propagate it out to their fans. I do the
Mm-hmm.
same when they put a book out. I repost it and go, hey, it's a good
Mm-hmm.
friend of mine, Rick. He's done a great job. Read his book. Authors don't do enough of that. And if
Mm-hmm.
authors supported authors, everybody would be on the bestseller list because, you know, if you put out a book, go buy it. And if 100 people go buy your book, I guarantee you the next morning you're going to go out and see that you're number one in your category. The
Mm-hmm.
algorithms work that way. I don't think authors figured out yet how to be supportive. A lot of them want to just write.
Mm-hmm.
Writing is a part of what you do, but a part of what you do is also the marketing and the communication and the fan interaction and things along those lines. Those are all parts of what you have to do as a writer. And I think a lot of authors just don't do that. And if I were to tell your writers to do one thing is, hey, let's get a network together. And when you've got a book coming out, I'll buy it. Don't send me an advance or your copy. You don't make any money doing that. I'll go
Yeah.
buy it. When I stumbled across Eric, I started buying Ripaverse stuff,
Mm-hmm.
reading it and liking it. And I don't, you support people by supporting people.
Yeah.
Words are cheap, but crack open the wallet occasionally and buy the damn book. And Mike Barron and I are working on a project together. I bought his Florida Man comic, and the both issues because I want to read them and I want to support Mike. And
Mm-hmm.
it would have been easy for me as a co-author to go, Mike, shoot me a copy of that for free. He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make money doing that. And at that point, the relationship almost becomes tainted, and we're
Mm-hmm.
we're we're trying to seed each other and stuff. I just buy the stuff, read it, and if I like it, it goes in my blog. If I really like it, I'll invite the author on. We'll talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fun to do that way. And if authors all did that, we would all be a hell of a lot more successful.
Yeah, all lifting each other up. Yeah. I think my thought on that is so in the author circles that I used to go in, and it's funny that you say that because I say used to. I don't travel in any author circles right now, mostly because usually what happens is there's always like one bad seed that somehow like gets into like the group, and then they try to like take advantage of the group kind of thing. So I think this is why we don't have nice things, right? It's like one bad person, right? We can't just like prune the field of the one weed. We have to be kind of like, now I hate everybody and get away kind of thing. But I guess like that's just the fun thing about having communities of people, like good intentions, but then somebody manipulates it and then we're all sitting here. But I also agree that with your take that if we were all communicating and helping each other out a little bit more, we'd probably all be in better places for sure.
I think it's so simple to do, to just go, once a week, I'm going to engage with a new author or an author I've read before and read their latest book and post a review.
Mm-hmm.
God, that means a lot for some people. I don't personally spend a lot of time perusing the reviews, but once or twice a week, I'll go in and look and see if there's been a spike or something that I need to look at. But for a lot of authors, that's a big deal, especially new authors. And
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a show now, so you're actually forming your own network, just like I did, whether you know it or not. You're going to have a network of authors that do that. We should be supporting each other. And that's that simple. It really is. And all of them trying to manipulate the algorithms on Amazon and all that crap, forget it. If we all just bought each other's books and read them and posted even
Reviews
a one-line
about
review,
them.
a one-line review, I really like this book.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, reviews is like the hardest thing to get sometimes. That's a discussion for another day. But so we're about to hit the hour mark. Where can we find you outside of the links that I have in the description? And do you have anything coming out that you want us to know about?
Oh, geez. I have a lot coming out. I had one book already this year with Bain Books. Weird War China, I contributed a story to. I'm working on a story for another anthology that they're pulling together. I've got a Galaxy's Edge book that's done and ready to go. I've got a Blue Dawn book 5, Patrons of Terror, is done, and I'm working on the final edit on that this weekend, actually. And I've got a book done for the Land and Sea series, which is kicking off season 2, which is a trilogy. That book, first book is done. I'm starting the second book shortly. So I'm anticipating about 8 books published this year. So it's going to be a blast. I've got tons of stuff going. I'm enjoying myself. Best place to connect with me, go to Amazon.com, go to Facebook, go to Twitter. Follow me if you think my stuff is funny and you like me. If you don't, then don't.
Okay, perfect. That was so awesome. Thank you. And you guys can find his socials down below in the video description if you guys would like to do that. That is going to wrap up this interview. Thank you again for being my first guest on here. I really do appreciate it. I had a great time learning and listening to you. So we'll probably do this again on the last Friday of the following month. I'm not announcing who that guest is, but I'm going to have to drink coffee before they come on because they have a lot more energy than I do. But it's going to be great and you guys are going to love it. But until then, I'm going to go ahead and hit the end button and end the stream once, confirm, and I'll talk to you guys again real soon. So bye.